In the heart of the dark Carpathian wilderness, a storm brews, not of rain or thunder, but of blood and vengeance. Dracula, the immortal lord of the night, moves like a shadow, his crimson eyes burning with an unholy fire. Opposing him, beneath the full moon's haunting glow, stands the werewolf, an untamed beast of raw power, its golden eyes filled with primal fury. When the night falls, only one can reign supreme. Fangs clash against claws, blood spills into the earth, and legends collide in an earth-shattering battle that will shake the supernatural world to its core. But as dawn creeps over the horizon, a cruel truth emerges. Not all wars end in victory. Some are merely the beginning. Who will survive this epic encounter? And what happens when darkness meets the fury of the moon? Stay tuned for the ultimate showdown, Dracula versus the werewolf. The night was thick with mist, swirling over the ancient Carpathian mountains. A full moon hung high, casting an eerie glow over the landscape, its silver light splitting through the skeletal branches of the leafless trees. Deep within the forest, a primal growl resonated through the night, followed by the soft but deliberate rustling of foliage. Something massive moved in the darkness, stalking its prey. In the distance, at the highest peak of the mountains, loomed Castle Dracula, an ominous fortress shrouded in legend and fear. Its jagged towers clawed at the heavens, silhouetted against the moon. Within its stone walls, Count Dracula stirred. He had felt it, the presence of an ancient enemy, a being whose blood pulsed with raw, untamed fury. The Count rose from his grand throne, his piercing crimson eyes glowing as he moved toward the arched window. Below, his keen vision caught the shifting form in the darkness, a beast of immense power, its hulking frame moving with both grace and primal aggression. A werewolf, drawn to the castle by an instinct as old as time. Dracula smiled, his sharp fangs glinting. He had faced many adversaries, but few intrigued him as much as the legendary lycanthrope. Where vampires were creatures of cunning, patience, and seduction, werewolves were the embodiment of unrestrained chaos. Tonight, two of the deadliest forces of the supernatural world would collide. The werewolf stepped from the shadows, its form fully illuminated by the pale light. Towering over an ordinary man, it was a monstrous figure of muscle and fur, its eyes burning with the hunger of the hunt. Its breathing was heavy, nostrils flaring as it took in the scent of its ancient enemy. The air crackled with energy, a tension that stretched between the two beings like a drawn bowstring. Dracula descended from the castle in a silent sweep, his long cloak billowing behind him. His movement was effortless, unnatural, like a shadow detaching from the darkness. He stood before the werewolf, unbothered by its sheer size and raw power. The beast snarled, saliva dripping from its elongated fangs. It could smell the undead essence of the vampire lord, a scent that stirred its primal instincts. Werewolves and vampires had clashed for centuries, each species seeking dominance over the other. Tonight, that war would be rekindled in a fight that would shake the mountains. The werewolf lunged first, a blur of muscle and fury, its claws slashing through the air with devastating speed. Dracula twisted away, moving impossibly fast, his form a shadow slipping through the night. But the beast was relentless, its powerful legs propelling it forward as it swiped again, this time grazing the Count's arm. Dracula hissed, glancing down at the shallow wound, a rare occurrence. The werewolf's claws were formidable, its strikes heavy with a force to rip through stone. But Dracula had fought stronger foes. With a flick of his wrist, he vanished into a swirl of mist, reappearing behind the beast. With unnatural grace he struck, his elongated fingers clawing at the werewolf's back. The creature howled in rage and spun, its jaws snapping inches from Dracula's throat. It was fast, faster than most adversaries he had encountered. The fight raged on, a whirlwind of claw, fang, and shadow. The ground beneath them shattered as they clashed, the very air pulsing with the impact of their battle. The werewolf fought with raw aggression, each movement filled with the savage strength of a beast at its peak. It was a force of nature, unshackled by fear or hesitation. Every swipe of its massive claws was meant to kill, every lunge an attempt to tear its enemy apart. Dracula, however, was methodical. He dodged and countered with precise strikes, aiming for weak points, exploiting the werewolf's wild, unrefined tactics. He moved like a ghost, his presence shifting from one shadow to the next. But the werewolf adapted. It learned. It began predicting Dracula's movements, its instincts sharpened by centuries of survival. Then, with a roar, it caught Dracula midair, its claws sinking into his torso. The Count's crimson eyes widened as he was slammed into the earth with a force that cracked the ground beneath him. The werewolf pounced, its jaws opening wide, ready to tear into the vampire's throat. But just before it could bite down, Dracula's body dissolved into a swarm of bats, the creatures screeching as they scattered into the night. The beast recoiled, momentarily confused, as Dracula reformed a few feet away, his hand now crackling with dark energy. With a swift motion, he unleashed a blast of pure necrotic force. The werewolf was hurled backward, crashing through a line of trees. Both creatures rose to their feet, bloodied but unbroken. They were equals, neither willing to submit. The werewolf, its golden eyes burning with an ancient rage, let out a chilling howl that echoed through the valley. Dracula smirked. He respected this creature. It was a worthy adversary, perhaps even his greatest challenge. But Dracula had one advantage: his control over the darkness. As the battle resumed, Dracula began weaving his powers, manipulating the shadows around them. The werewolf struck again, but this time its claws met nothing, only empty darkness. It roared in frustration as Dracula's voice echoed through the night. Then, in a flash, the Count appeared behind the beast and sank his fangs into its shoulder. The werewolf howled, pain lacing its roar as its cursed blood met the vampire's bite. But before Dracula could drink deeply, the beast retaliated. With a mighty twist, it ripped Dracula away and sank its own fangs into the vampire's flesh. A deadly silence followed. Both creatures staggered back. The werewolf's body trembled as Dracula's venom seeped into its bloodstream, while Dracula himself felt the taint of the lycanthrope's bite spreading through him. They had wounded each other in ways neither had expected. The moon was beginning to set. Time was running out. Both beings faced one another once more, weary but unwilling to fall. They knew that this battle had no easy victor. Either one would perish, or they would fight until the dawn forced a retreat. The werewolf, sensing the urgency of time, lunged forward with an ear-splitting roar, its massive claws slicing through the air like the talons of death itself. Dracula did not retreat. Instead, he met the beast head-on, his own monstrous side fully unleashed. His form blurred as he shifted, his once elegant and aristocratic appearance warping into something darker, more primal. His fingers elongated into talon-like claws, his fangs extended, and his entire frame twisted into something between a man and a shadow. A monstrous hybrid of darkness and death. The impact of their collision shook the ground, sending tremors through the land. The werewolf slashed, its claws tearing deep into Dracula's chest, ripping through his flesh like paper. Blood splattered across the ground, sizzling as it met the cold earth. Dracula, in turn, struck with devastating force, his claws sinking into the werewolf's ribs, piercing through muscle and bone. He twisted his grip, eliciting a howl of agony from the beast. But the werewolf refused to fall. It sank its jaws into Dracula's neck, shaking violently, trying to rip the vampire apart. The pain was searing, unbearable. Dracula let out a guttural hiss, his hands clawing at the beast's back, trying to pry it off. Yet, even as they tore into each other, neither let go. Their blood mixed, their supernatural natures colliding in a chaotic blend of predator and predator. The werewolf's strength was limitless, but its body was failing. Dracula's venom, though not enough to turn it, was weakening its regeneration. Its movements became slower, its attacks slightly more desperate. Dracula, on the other hand, felt something far worse, the werewolf's curse spreading within him. His wounds, though they would normally heal, instantly lingered. His undead body rejected the infection, but it did not dispel it. their fates intertwined in the darkness of the forest, locked in an eternal war of fang and claw. As the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, only silence remained. Who won? Only the night knew.